Alright, so in today's video I'm going to go through some mixing tips that will help give your track a lift. These are small changes but make a massive difference, especially when listening to your track in the car, on small speakers and in headphones as well. So here's before we apply the mixing tips. And here's after. I release new videos every week about music production, so if that's something you're into, give us a like and a subscribe, and let's get into the video. Alright, so the first step, once I've got my track down, is to make sure the levels are correct compared to my reference track. The best place to start with this is to look at the kick and the bass first. Start with the low end, and then do the drums, and do it in order of importance. So on my reference track here, I've got an EQ, which I'm going to round off at 100 Hertz. And then I've got the spectrum analyzer here, and then on my master channel I'm going to do the same. So if I go to my reference track, alright, so the kick and the bass is peaking at -32, and then if I look at mine, if I turn off the reference track, so I'm at about -36. So I've got a bit of room to play with here. Just as a rule with the kick, I don't want dB above 6, because then it just sounds distorted. So I mean there's a tiny bit of wiggle room here. You can make the bass line a little bit louder there. So now I've made my bass line louder, let's compare energy levels compared to the reference track. Alright, so mine's peaking about -30 now. This isn't a fine art, however, it will get you in the right spot in terms of energy levels. If we move on to my drum group, so of course with the drums it's going to be the high end, so you want to take off the EQ, because obviously we're working in the higher frequencies, and do the same for the reference track too. So if I play the reference track, you can see mine all the way down here, so we got some room to play with. We're about -42. Shit, we're way down there. Alright, there's a few things I'm going to add later on, which I'll go into, but for now, we just want to make sure that the energy levels are in and around the right place. So we can move up these meters, and then check again where we are. Alright, so that's in a better spot. Of course, listen to what you're turning up, don't just be turning it up randomly. Make sure it sounds good as well. And then what you can do from there, you can go onto the mids and check the levels of the mids, you can check the levels of the vocals, and then finish off with the effects. As you can tell, it's not a fine art, but it will get you in the right spot in terms of energy levels compared to a track of industry standard. So give it a try, let me know how you get on. So once I've got the energy levels in the right place, I want to check if there's any overlap between sounds. I want to make sure that certain parts of the track, especially the kick and the bass, have their own space. And I also want the other elements to not be muddy in their respective frequencies. So the first thing I look at is putting the sidechain compressor on the bass and then letting the kick punch through. So I guess the main things I'm looking at here with the attack, I want the compression to happen as soon as possible, as soon as the kick hits. That's why it's down at the lowest it can be. And then the release is at 140 milliseconds, and the reason being is because the length of my kick is about 140. So I want to make sure that the compression stops as soon as the kick finishes. Obviously, if you put it right down, it's going to be very aggressive and it's not going to sound completely right. But to get the right level for you, I'd pull the threshold all the way down and then just work it in. Now I'll put an analyzer on my mid-range. You can see I've got some elements encroaching on the low end, so I can look to cut those out. So basically anything below 200. We can do the same for the vocal as well. So with the vocal, we can look to take out some of the low end, but we can also look at taking out some high end as well, just so it doesn't get in the way of the drums. But I don't want to take the meat out of the vocal, so I'll just do One thing you want to be wary of, if you've got any reverb on anything, so this prolonged vocal I have here has reverb on it. As you can see from the EQ8, we had lower frequencies and we definitely don't want those. So anything below 100, we'll just get rid of. Also with the reverb here, so we don't have anything spilling into the low end, we'll just do a low cut, and anything below 250 Hertz will get taken out. So if you remember from earlier, our drum group was a bit quiet before we brought the levels up. One way I like to make the drum sound a bit fuller is by doing some parallel compression. So what you do is you'll add an audio channel, insert an audio track, and then you'll put a compressor on it and you'll put an EQ. You want to put the ratio up to 8. With the attack, I don't want it too low. I don't want to kill the transients of the drums. And then the release, I usually put it on auto, and make sure your makeup gain is on. If you turn this right up, it'll be super loud and distorted, so we just want to blend it in. Just make sure on the audio channel you've highlighted the drum group, post mixer, and here I've just got the channel I've grouped it under. And then what you want to do is just turn it up to your liking. It just adds that fullness to the drums. As you can hear, it gives the drums a nice lift. So once I've done that, I look to EQ every individual element. I just want to take out the shit sounds. I heard someone in this vocal chop earlier. So yeah, just make sure to do that and remove any harsh sounding frequencies that you don't like. So next up is to make sure that the track has automation in it, especially around the drop, because when the drop hits, you want to make sure that it packs a punch. So I do the majority of my automation on the master channel when it comes to the drop. So I'm going to add 2 EQs, one to roll off the high end, one to roll off the low end. I'll do the same with volume automation as well, and also width as well. So with the utility, it's at 100%. I'll probably take out most of the width and then bring it back. And also with the gain, bit of volume automation. I don't tend to do this more than 3 dB because then you can really notice the difference and it's just too much. So, but again, play around with it, see what works. And the last thing I'll do is I'll do a little bit of mastering to give it a lift, and then I will add a little bit of glue compression just to make sure it sounds cohesive, but I don't want it to sound completely squashed. When I turn the threshold up, it really squashes the louder sound, so this is going to be very, very subtle. So we're about halfway towards 5 in gain reduction. And yeah, I'll just turn up the makeup gain a little bit to make up for the sound we lost. And then I add a little bit of saturation. I tend to find that if you add a bit of saturation, it sounds better on speakers, like small speakers and in the car. But again, if you add too much, it just sounds distorted. So, like so. And then with the final utility, I just want to make sure that it sounds good in mono. And last, I'll add a limiter to make sure it's not clipping. You set the ceiling to about -1, but if your total volume doesn't go above this, then it will be bypassed anyway. And finally, we can look at our spectrum analyzer. See our energy levels are where they need to be. So thanks very much for watching. Be sure to watch this video next, and I'll see you next week for another video.